The worst advice I've ever been given is like, go with your gut feeling.
Oh my gosh, I love the fact that you brought this up because there's such a nuance to this conversation. And I love how fuck your mood, follow the plan is such good advice. I just feel like people aren't always telling the full truth. Sometimes business sucks, or sometimes you just need to work harder.
My first time in therapy was, I think, 10 years ago. I was so disconnected from my body, but I was so comfortable in my skin.
We know, women know, we always know. Instincts.
Really.
Yes.
If I'm walking on the street, I'm gonna listen to my body. Is that street safer in the night or this street?
I think that there's a real powerful tool that gets hidden away when we as adults are only relying on logic, when instincts are the things that usually save us in our big decision. When you cook a meal for your partner and then they sit down and they start eating and you're just watching them. And then there's a part of you that's like, do you like it? Obviously.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Really
you.
happy to have you here, finally.
I'm really, really delighted to be here. This is awesome.
Thank you. So today's guest is Shantani Moore. Shantani is a powerhouse in the world of somatic and body based performance coaching, especially in the corporate world and people who actually go to work, and she assists them doing that. She describes herself as a body intelligence coach who specializes in nervous system performance and body language intelligence. And I read online that over the past decade, you have worked with the top 1% of global wellness leaders and celebrities. So you bring that level of elite support into the corporate world. How was that experience?
I mean, truly just it's my favorite thing to do, and it's humbling, and yet at the same time it's just such a great reminder that no matter what accolades or achievements, we're all human at the end of the day. And sometimes I think when we are caught up in our goals or our ambitions, or especially if you're someone that's in the public eye, sometimes we forget that at the end of the day we're all just human, and it's just my greatest pleasure to remind people of that.
Wow. Your corporate work also revolves around rethinking the whole idea of wellness at work. And that was something that really stuck out for me when I was researching about your work. And would you like, for the audience, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself and add something that I might have missed while introducing you?
Sure. So again, my name is Shantani, and I'm a body intelligence coach. And just like you said, I think that very often there's a segmentation that happens, right, when it comes to the conversation around work and wellness, when at the intersection of those is the person doing both. And the conversation that I really encourage myself to have, and then has translated to my clients and my work, is how can we bring more of your humanity into the day to day? Because actually, that's the engine that's running every decision, every meeting, every presentation is you. And I just like to encourage people to find really strategic ways to do that, because a lot of the corporate wellness initiatives that tend to be more mainstream are to, you know, every quarter have one wellness day, when actually every other day matters just as much, right? So, how can we really overturn and revolutionize the way that we think about how we structure our schedules, um, how people's lived experience might show up in the way that they're showing up in the workplace or in their businesses, and relating to one another. So, just really encouraging people to think about it more holistically and not as something that we just add on as a band-aid, but really thinking about it from the inside out.
How did you discover what you do?
Ah.
That's just something I've been curious about.
Yeah, I mean, it came one of a dear mentor that I have says this often, and she says the medicine that we make is the medicine that we take. Meaning
Mm,
that usually when we find ourselves really passionate about a certain subject, it's because we lived through challenges related to it, and then we create solutions for people just like us, right? So for me, I actually had worked in the corporate fitness space and with other wellness brands. And behind the scenes, to keep it succinct, there was a lot of dissonance between the initiatives that we were pushing versus what was being demanded of us behind the scenes, or the culture behind the scenes. And for me, that really came to a turning point during the pandemic, when everybody was trying to revolutionize they were doing the way that they were working and the ways that they were doing business. And I completely came into full burnout, and I found myself in a place where I was laying on the ground in a parking garage and physically unable to move because my body had burned out. And that was the beginning of a huge wake up call for me of, here I am getting on microphones, speaking on stages, talking about integrating wellness and, your own humanity. And behind the scenes, I was not fully in integrity, I'll be honest. And so I had to really go on my own personal journey through different types of therapy and somatic work and mindset work and hiring coaches. And now I'm just on a mission to help as many people as possible to do that, because that's a struggle that a lot of my friends and colleagues and clients, we struggle with, of this need to feel like we have to perform rather than being present in our leadership and being honest about that while still being professional and showing up for our responsibilities. So it's a really fine line to walk. So that was my story, and I just help other people to claim their own story and to be more honest day to day, so they can show up as more powerful
Yeah.
leaders.
Thank you for this. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation because this podcast is all about conversations that live beneath the surface, conversations that ask us to slow down, to get honest, to reconnect with who we are. And a lot of times we always have a culture and racial and a global south versus global north angle a lot of times on this podcast. And this is the reason always like to speak with women and women who have experiences and who've done the work. So I'm really, I guess in this conversation, we will unpack that question of what does it mean to to really be in your body? What does it mean to feel good in your skin? What does it mean to be home? And we'll explore the also several sides of healing and spirituality, which are something on the internet that we see, but a lot of us don't know how to navigate that space. And I'm especially looking forward to that. We'll talk about body intelligence through the lens of culture, shame, um, and I hope that my audience will resonate with this. So thank you for being here and doing all of this work. Um, I know you told me that parking garage story, but I was wondering if somebody else would, because I always wonder when I listen to someone, I'm like, why is this person doing what they're doing? And I've literally, it's been my experience. If you are doing something and you're really good at it and you're very passionate about it, there is a reason why you're doing it. Something happened to you that you're doing
That's
that.
right.
So there's also a story why I'm doing this podcast,
Yeah.
something very similar, very personal. So I know that. So welcome. And I would like to start off by asking you, we use these words really openly now: disconnected from our bodies, disembodied. And I've been thinking, what does it really mean, in your view, to be disconnected from your body? What does a disconnected person look like?
Mm. So just to clarify, when I'm when I'm experiencing somebody who's disconnected from their bodies, number one, I want to wash this over with. It comes in seasons. First of all, I just want to humanize the conversation of, I am not immune, you are not immune. Sometimes life comes out as really, really fast, and we do find ourselves in a survival state. But what can happen often is that the human body is so intelligent, and yet sometimes it will do whatever is needed to keep us safe and just keep us protected, and that can sometimes backfire. So When I see that somebody is disconnected from their bodies, is usually when they actually, sometimes it's almost like a plastered on smile, where they're kind of like, everything is fine, everything's great all the time, and I'm like, it's this like flat experience of them. Like, that's my experience of them. It's like very flat, which tells me that there's probably a mask there and there's something behind it. So that's like from an intuitive sense what I experience. But for anybody who's listening who's wondering, am I disconnected from my body? That can be something as simple as not experiencing as much sensation, kind of feeling like you're flatlining, waking up tired, but also being wired at night, feeling like language that they'll use often is I don't know. I'm not like, I don't know. I don't know what I want. I don't know what this is. I don't know. There's something more, but I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty in the system, which for me as a practitioner, I believe that, our bodies are so instinctual. There's usually a clear yes and a clear no. And that filter of I don't know is usually more of a diversion from claiming the yes and setting a boundary with the no. Speaking of boundaries, that's a big one. When people tell me I have a hard time setting boundaries, um, that can be a telltale sign. There's so many, but I agree with you that it can be used so flippantly, especially right now, of disconnection,
Yeah.
embodiment. Even the word somatics now is now really hitting the mainstream, and everybody's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
taking 3 rounds of breath and then like
Yeah.
calling it something different. So I think,
Yeah, and I realized a lot of these modalities can
yes.
coexist because I remember when I used to go into therapy, like my first time in therapy was, I think, 10 years ago, and I was so disconnected from my body, but I was so comfortable in my skin.
Let's talk about that.
Like I was so confident. Like my therapist, like she would tell me, like, you're so comfortable in your skin. I was so comfortable with who I was, who I am, what I'm doing, my goals. I was very self-assured in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. But deeper, there was a disconnect with the body. And that was because I was suppressing trauma, and it was just taking me a long time. So I realized you can have two situations coexisting.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think that's a really, thank you for bringing that up, because I think I know a lot of people experience that, where it's a really fine line of nuance. But sometimes, even when I'm talking to clients and you ask them to close their eyes and to just feel sensation in their body, it almost feels like a numbness, where it's not necessarily bad or good. There's like a neutrality of numbness, which sometimes professionally can work out, but over time can lead to an overall sense of just lackluster in life and a lack of aliveness. So, so yeah, I love that you brought that up, because there are so many people that I work with who are confident by trade and like, I know who I am. I've done all of the therapy work, right? But if you're listening to this and you're like, I go to therapy, I know what's wrong, I know what I've been through, I've done all the recon, I've done all the, and then you're still experiencing the same patterns, it's usually not an intellectual issue. Because I think therapy is really important. Like, talk therapy is really important, in my opinion. If you are not clear on what the pattern is or the origin and you want to make sense of it, but my work is really actually about, what if we detached from the story a little bit and we're a little bit more removed from the parts of our identity that are wrapped around the parking garage, that are wrapped around these instances in our lives, and just finish the bodily response that's keeping us stuck in that loop.
Yeah, for sure. No, and also you're also so right. Like I was so disconnected from my body that I couldn't really understand what my body was feeling. But my mind, of course, was able to understand, okay, now I'm tired, now I'm sleepy. These are all things that brain and your brain tells you. The brain sends the signal. But I was if I said I was tired because my brain told me I'm tired, not because my body told me I'm tired. And now I think after years of work, my body knows before my brain. Like my intuition is so sharp. Like I literally, my body just knows. Like so many times I'm traveling and we go to these ruined castles, and I always tell my husband, I'm like, "Do you also feel this very dark energy?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do." And this is such a flip for me because now actually my brain takes a while to catch up, but my body knows what's
Mm,
coming.
yeah.
And sometimes it's unexplained. And literally, I read a book a few months ago, The Gift of Fear, and I loved that book. I forget who was it by, but it was such a great book because it basically tells us that fear makes us act in certain ways. So like if I'm walking on the street, I'm going to listen to my body if I should walk on this street or that street. Is that street safer in the night or this street? And this just completely changed for me. And it's really crazy how it changed for me. Like 10 years on, I listen to what my body is telling me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just
Yeah.
like that pure instinct that we have. I remember when I was on this my friends and I went hiking in Yosemite National Park here in the United States, and we did 16 miles in 16 hours to do Half Dome, which is this huge, it's like a landmark that people, especially climbers, really want to do. And I just remember we started at midnight and we were walking through, and I could sense my animal sense like coming alive. And it just made me think of what you're talking about, right? Like where you can feel yourself being perceived, or you can sense when things are safe and not. So, translating what you just said, my work is really about okay, when you're walking down the street at night in the city, you can feel that. How about when you're sitting in a contract negotiation? Can you feel that? How about when you're sitting having a conversation with your partner? Can you feel that? And when we actually become so intelligent in our listening, it can really it can really save us, because we look back on our lives on maybe a job that you've taken, and now you look back and you go, "Oh, I should have seen that coming," right? But in the moment, you that moment that was happening, you had the opportunity to go, "Oh, something's not right. So how can I make this a yes for me, a yes for the other person, and a yes for the partnership or the collective overall?" And just being more holding ourselves to a higher standard with that and not settling and being curious is really a big part of my work.
Yeah. So I want to understand, just in layman terms, what is body intelligence?
Instincts.
Really?
Yes. If I could put it into one word, and this has been my life's work, is how can I put this into one word? But
I love that you can do that. It's so hard.
yeah, it
You
can
really thought about
be.
it.
It's like instincts. Yeah. And leveraging our instincts as our own natural authority, right? Because I think
Okay.
as we're going through our lives, I know this has been my experience and many people that I've spoken to, is that there's so many other things that our minds can factor in when making decisions, right? Is this logical? What about how's this going to play out with my 2 year, 10-year plan? How all these other things. But we forget our instincts. And if you've ever watched, I was just at dinner with a new friend last night, and their daughter is 5 years old. And to watch her last night, moving through dinner instinctively, I want this, I don't want this, getting up, wanting to leave the table, and just her parents like moving with her. At some point, we forget that. And I think that there's a real powerful tool that gets um, hidden away when we as adults are only relying on logic, when instincts are the things that usually save us in our big decisions. So,
Yeah, that's what the book was about, The Gift of Fear.
yeah, it's huge. And I think that there's a whole conversation, right, about on a larger sense, what is available when people are disconnected, for the lack of a better term, from their own instincts. Then you start to getting into a conversation around control, around power, around all this stuff. But my work is like, how can we come home to that, remember something that we were born with? We were born with this, just like my friend's daughter last night. So just really coming back to that and then using that as our compass, I think allows us to make more powerful decisions that are in our best interest and the interest of everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah. And because I actually do this podcast for women, women of color, I'm really interested in knowing, why do so many women struggle to feel at home in their bodies?
Oh gosh, I wish I had one word for that. Okay. Why do we? Okay, so I'll start off higher level and then we can go a little deeper, right? I think on a higher level, what most women can relate to is just the pressure, which usually comes up around puberty. For some people, for me, it came earlier, and especially for women of color, to fit into the box, right? To sit down, be quiet, follow the rules, and depending culture to culture, the narrative is slightly different, but essentially it's the same, right? To just be a servant, basically. Now, on a biological level, there's this interesting conversation that I've been getting into, which is about how biologically are women and people who identify this way chemically wired for validation. And this is a really interesting, nuanced conversation. So we're gonna weave through it. But this interesting thing that I was going into based off of Alison Armstrong's work, and she does a lot of work around integrating the masculine and the feminine, men and women in true union, where men aren't trying to control women and women aren't trying to manipulate men, all through the lens of who's having the most power in relationships. And when she talks about, she's like, that part of you who maybe you can relate to this, when you cook a meal for your partner and then they sit down and they start eating and you're just watching them, and then there's a part of you that's like, do you like it? Like, obviously. Right? And you're just like waiting for them to go, oh my goodness, this is the best thing. That was so right. And so she talks about it's so relatable. I do this like every night. Right? And it's obviously they're eating it. It's edible. You've tasted it. You know it tastes good, but you're waiting for that validation. So to come back to the point, she talks about how biologically women are engineered for that validation because there was a time when we depended on the masculine for our physical safety. So we are biologically engineered to um, perceive their validation as safety. Otherwise, if they didn't see our cooking as valuable or whatever else, if a tiger came into the community, they wouldn't see a reason to save us.
Yeah, this is so funny you say that, because normally, I mean, of course, I don't keep looking at my husband waiting to say something, but normally I wouldn't ask. I'll wait that
Yes.
he'll say something. And when he cooks and I don't say nothing, he's like, "The food is not so bad, or is it?" and I'm and I'm like, "No, it's great. Thank you for cooking." It's like one of those things. Vanessa Van Edwards, she's this really big coach for nonverbal cues and communication,
Yeah.
and Vanessa always used to say, I'm a recovering awkward person." I love that introduction where she's like, "I'm a recovering awkward person," and he's like, she said in one of her, I think on Stephen Bartlett's podcast or somewhere, she said that men actually women like men who are funny. Men actually don't need women to be funny as long as she's laughing on his jokes.
That's right. I've seen that one.
So this kind of like this thing makes me think, okay, because I did not say the food was great, you just decided to say it yourself,
Yeah.
which it is, which it is, by the way. But this is so typical.
Yeah, it's like it's so funny, it's so relatable because it's very similar in my dynamic too. But yeah, so you asked me the question like why is it so hard for women to feel safe and at home in our bodies? I think there's an external pressure, which I named at the beginning of what you've been taught growing up by society, also from like not no, culturally in your family, all kinds of things. And then there's also this like internal aspect that is, I just want to validate, is very natural. And though we need to know how to go, okay, I hear you. I hear that voice that's seeking that validation. Like, we're good, we're safe, because we just live in a different time now. But we just, life is moving so fast. I think our biology just it
This
never
is so
lies.
interesting. Why women feel just, yeah, it could just literally apply to anything. But
Hmm.
there must be other reasons as well why women struggle. Of course, the conditioning, the social pressure, a lot of those things, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so much of my work, I love that you speak to women through this lens, it's because so much of my work is also factoring in what I call it like lived experience, but other people would call it like trauma that you've been through, right? So whether that's big T trauma, or even like we call it little T trauma, where there's these like little moments in your life where someone made a little comment that didn't make you feel really good, and there's just like this compounding story. I tell my clients our bodies are like libraries, you know? And when you come into
Yeah.
session with me, we're just going to take one book off the shelf, and we're just going to open up to whatever page wants to fall open today, and we're just going to read that page, and whatever it makes us feel or learn more about ourselves, like, we get to radically say yes to that being part of who you are. So it's a really interesting conversation of what is this really about? And I think it's just about belonging. If we like, we all just want to belong. We all want to know that we're validated, seen, heard, that we exist. I saw this something somewhere on a podcast, a book. I don't know. I'm always taking in so much information, but where someone was saying that the eyes, like human eyes, weren't designed, and our brains weren't designed to perceive ourselves this much, like with mirrors or with phones, with cameras, and like hundreds of years ago, yes, but also thousands of years ago, like the only way that we knew that we had something on our face or that something was off was if someone else told us, because we
That's
only,
so true.
right, like we would
How the
only
hell
see
we gonna,
ourselves
yeah.
if we were like looking in a river, and even then it was like very rare when it was clear glass, whereas now we can see so much of ourselves being perceived, and perceiving our perceiving our existence is just something that our biology is still wrapping itself around. So I think
Right.
it's just the human condition.
If body intelligence is actually just instinct,
Mhm.
do you have a different experience working with men and different experience working with women? Because women have much, much sharper instincts compared to men.
Mm. Okay, so the short answer is yes. And it's so fascinating because in my work, it's really about, there are so many different layers to the work. I work with physical challenges, emotional, mental, relational, ancestral, identity. Like, there's so many layers. But what is very interesting is how they're typically, the access is different. So when I'm working with a client, let's say a woman comes in, usually she'll come in, and once we get into the process, she'll start to breathe a little bit deeper. And then she tends to find softness into what feels like sadness, into grief or betrayal or abandonment. And it actually shoots out through into anger. Like, anger is where it lands in the big explosion before we get to a sense of ease or peace, right? Whereas this is something that I've noticed just in my work, and that could just be the clients that I attract. So I just want to name that. Whereas a lot of the men that I've worked with, they find anger first. So they'll go from ease to anger. So I hold the space for all of their anger or all of their masculine rage, and then they fall into grief. And then that's kind of the place where they have their eruption of grief. And then after that, they find more peace. So that's a really interesting thing that I see across those two major archetypes. And I work with people like all across the gender spectrum. So it's really interesting. But I have noticed that pattern for sure.
Right. What does this work look like?
You mean like if someone were to watch it?
Yeah, I mean, is it like body work? Is it breath work? Is it
What is it?
what does it
Yeah,
look like?
so my history is I was a still am certified, but a yoga teacher turned Reiki master teacher, turned sound healer, and then I studied shamanic arts and then some nervous system techniques like fascial maneuvers and spinal energetics. So the reason why I call myself a body intelligence coach is because inevitably I have this Mary Poppins bag of things that I bring out in session, right? Um, but in a session, the first session, we would come in, you would have your intake, I'd look it over, we might have a conversation beforehand if that's necessary, and then we come either virtually, usually, or sometimes in person. And I will make you some tea and we'll sit and we will just talk. And I'll just get to know you and you'll get to know me. And part of that process is just so that our nervous systems, our bodies can find a sense of comfort together, a sense of regulation together, which is the baseline of the work. And once we get into session, I'll usually, depending on the client, start with some breath because that's the most accessible way that people can get into a sense of relaxation. It doesn't require anything, but just right. So I'll lead you through some breath work. Depending on the client, sometimes I'll lead them through some light stretching. And it's nothing, we're not doing like any crazy yoga poses or anything like that. It's just an opportunity for us to really manipulate the fascia because that's really what the conversation is that we're having is how the fascia stores memory, and if we can start to activate those centers and massage them a bit while we down regulate your system and get you to a certain brainwave state, then um, what tends to happen is the body starts to have reflexes. So it's exactly as it sounds because sometimes when people see the kind of work that I do, they go, "Whoa, what is that?" And it's like it's just a subtle reflex. It'll start with a little twitch, or somebody will start scratching their neck or kind of rolling their shoulders because when we start to downregulate, we start to become more aware of the sensations. Like if you've ever meditated before, meditated for the first time, you sit for a long time and then all of a sudden your thoughts get loud, your seat starts to hurt, your back starts to ache, and you start to become more aware because you're slowing down. And then through a series of breath techniques, stretch techniques, and sound, in my work, I really like to focus on creating almost like a Pavlovian response. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, there's a study. Um, if you just Google Pavlov's dog, you'll find it. But basically, what they did is they had a dog and they would place food in front of the dog and they would ring a bell and they did it over and over and over again. And the dog would naturally salivate because there's food. And then in the experiment, they took the food away and they just rung the bell and then the dog would still salivate. So it's just an experiment around conditioning, right? So for me in my work, I use breath, stretch, and sound to create a Pavlovian response in a sequence of events to get your body to down regulate from a stressed out state from fight or flight faster. And then beyond that, as we continue to condition the body, we go, okay, now that you've down regulated, what do you want to say? What does your body want to say? What's really going on? And all of it starts to pour out so that when you're out of session with me and you're sitting in a boardroom, you're standing on stage, you're in a contract negotiation, you can tap into that state and get a more instinctual response of expressing the truth of what's actually beneath the surface because you practiced with me. Does that track?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then after we just integrate
Interesting, yeah.
and talk about it and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So the concept of integration actually came to me very
Hmm.
recently. Um, of course, I was integrating, but I didn't know what it really meant to integrate. And I recorded a podcast with a Kundalini activation coach, and she told me about. I was like, "What is integration? What do you mean by that?" And then she explained it to me, and I was like, "Well, I've been integrating for 10 years." She's like, "Yeah, that's true. You can integrate for a long, long time." I mean, as a human being is always progressing and growing and developing. So by that logic, I feel like we could be in our integration phase most of our lives.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that was really fascinating to me,
Ye-
the whole integration. something. Yeah.
And I think kind of just when you say that, it reminds me of what you said earlier about how right now with wellness and spirituality and mindset work, there are some terms that get used really flippantly. And I think that integration is another one of those words where people don't
Yeah.
really know what that means. So it's like,
Yeah. I asked her, I was like, what is integration? Like, what?
what did she say?
What is it? She told me this. She's like, it's the time after you do the work. I don't remember her exact words,
Sure.
but basically she explained it to me that it's the time that comes after doing the work. So it's like basically in layman terms a nervous system response. Your body and your brain, it takes a while to catch up with the work you've done,
Yeah, absolutely.
basically. So, but sometimes some things take 10 minutes to catch up, and sometimes some things take 10 years.
Absolutely. And I think, it's
Yeah.
interesting too because there's with my clients, I talk about integration through the lens of course, body work, right? Like giving your body time, nourishing, drinking water, da 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 da. And though, the question that I'm always asking is how is this work that we're doing together serving your vision off the table or out of session, right? Because so often we can get caught in this loop of hypertherapizing ourselves, always healing, always trying to learn more, always trying to dive deeper. And some people get caught into this place where we're never actually just living our lives and being like, my life is
Yeah.
good. And so much of my
Yeah.
work with integration, usually where I focus is okay, so we went into session, we got into the body, and something around your mom came up. So are you going to call your mom after this? Like, how are you going to take action based off of what you have learned? Because sometimes that's what I see a lot with this whole conversation is people just getting caught in that loop and it's not serving them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I have a question. So there's this entrepreneur who I follow a lot. Her name is Leila. I'm not sure how she pronounces her last name, but I think it's Leila
Oh, I
Hormozy.
love
Okay.
Layla.
Oh well, then
Okay.
you would have heard her
Yeah.
say, she talks a lot about how, we always say go with your gut feeling, go with your gut feeling, and she's like, the worst advice I've ever been given is like go with your gut
Mm,
feeling. While I'm very big on gut feeling and instincts, like I said, I know which street to walk in because I'm a woman. And this is, by the way, proven by research that women, if you give a woman a map, she'll be able to point out exactly what parts of the area or the neighborhood she lives in are unsafe in the night versus a man. A man cannot do that. So I believe in that, but I also kind of really believe in her, because in her words, because she has this attitude which I love, by the way, which I had most of my 20s. And do the work. Just fucking do the work. Nobody's gonna do it for you. Fuck your mood, follow the
give me
plan. And
a plan.
I love that because you have to do the work. Not everything is I'm gonna do it different because I'm a woman. No,
Mm-mm.
no. Some things are bad for
Mm.
everybody, including men and women both. And I feel like that is such a refreshing reminder because a lot of this spirituality and healing work is so performative lately that I feel like people are actually going back to the gender roles that we've been working so hard to break, like the whole trad wife thing, right? And then I love that, and I watched her video yesterday. She's like, the worst advice I've ever been given is to go with my gut feeling, because when you have a gut feeling about something, it's basically your nervous system telling you something out of fear.
Mhm.
So does that like not debunk the whole body intelligence
Oh
work?
my gosh, I love the fact that you brought this up because there's such a nuance to this conversation. I also love Layla Hormozy and I love how she's just that fuck your mood, follow the plan is such good advice because just kind of going back to this is my favorite thing to talk about, is how so many women especially we talk about the patriarchy and we talk about all of these things and then unknowingly it's like all roads are kind of like leading back and then you get into these spaces and you're like wait a minute, you're telling me to just soften and release and like follow my gut. And then I do have a lot of women. I had a woman come in. She literally, first session, I said, why are you here today? What brings you to me? And she just breaks down in tears because she was like, I used to work in this corporate job. I was burnt out, and everyone was saying I need to quit and do my own business. Anyway, fast forward 2 years, she's like, I saved up all my money and I'm going to all these spiritual circles, and everyone's telling me that I need to be more receptive. I need to receive, that I'm not open to receiving, and that's why I'm not making money in my business or whatever. And she's crying because she's like, it's been 2 years. I'm completely wiped my savings. I'm going to all of these ceremonies and I'm not receiving anything. And I literally, I just said, okay, hold on. I said, what's your website? And I go to her website, and it's like one landing page, vague language, no offers, no way to pay her, nothing. And I said, can I just be really honest with you right now? A lot of times in the spirituality space, we talk about the quote unquote divine feminine and how we're not feminine enough, we're not receiving enough. And I was like, you don't have a way for me to pay you or call you or anything on your website, girl. Like, of course it's not. Like, you don't have a receptivity problem. Like, you have a landing page problem. You have a pay portal problem. And I was like, it's this whole conversation. I was like, if you want to be esoteric and spiritual around it, fine. I think that it's really about honing in what is the divine integrated, really integrated masculine and feminine. But in her case, it was a divine masculine challenge that she was having. And I was like, you don't need to be laying on your back sitting in sound healings. Like, you need to be working on your ability to cultivate, to go out and to, I tell my clients to go out and hunt. Like, if you look at a lioness, she's not laying underneath a tree and just waiting for an antelope or gazelle to come by. She's
Yeah,
she's
a hundred
she's
percent.
going out, she's getting it, she's hunting, she's bringing back what she needs.
Hustle, hustle, hustle,
And it's
hustle.
like, well, knowing when, right? It's like, I think that conversation, I love that you brought it up, because when it comes to body intelligence, that's where it gets more nuanced when I work with clients more long term of like, okay, first of all, you're coming quote unquote disconnected from your body. First of all, let's get you to feel. Because if you can't feel, we can't even have the conversation. So we need you to be connected to sensations in your body. And then when I take it a step further in my work is, now when you feel a twinge in your left shoulder, what story is that connected to? For me, Shantani, I know that when I feel and experience a tension in my left shoulder, it's connected to a very specific childhood memory that has to do with rejection and abandonment. And so when I'm in a contract negotiation and someone says something and I feel that little twinge, I can go, okay, there's something about this that's making me feel like it's triggering an abandonment wound. So let me breathe and then let me respond knowing that. So it's not about like when she says, fuck your mood, follow the plan. It's like, yeah, follow the plan, and also discipline, having the discipline. And as you're moving through that, this body intelligence work is going to keep you from burning out as you're following the plan, because you'll be able to listen to those little cues of where sometimes we can get so tunnel vision that we end up on a parking garage floor. So that's the nuance, right? I think it requires that level of intelligence, pun intended, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I mean, I like to think that this is out of endearment, but my husband tells me he's never met anybody who's so disciplined like me. Like literally,
Mm.
he's like, he's like, you're so disciplined. Like you do the same thing every day. You wake up, you do the same thing every day, over and over and over and over. And this is insane. Like the amount of discipline. You don't care if it's Sunday. You don't care if it's 8 o'clock. You don't care if it's 6 o'clock. You don't care if you were drinking a night before you were in a bar. Like this has to happen on this time. It has to happen. And I told him that this is completely normal for me.
Mm.
By the way, thank you for your words, but it's completely normal for me because this is the way I was raised.
Ritual.
Like
Yeah.
being able to do something over and over, like that ancient wisdom
Yep.
about hard work. It's like if you do something every day, it's the only way you're gonna make it.
Mm.
And I think in some ways it's true. Of course, there's other ways of looking at things, but I love women like Lela, and I love women like Cody Sanchez, who basically
You and
who
I
basically
probably have the
tell you,
same feed.
yeah, yeah, literally, I love women like that because I'm like, not everything is about gender.
That part. Okay, let's talk about that because I do have something to say about that.
Go on,
I
tell
I
me.
just listen. I just feel like it can all be true in the sense that maybe I'm a black woman, okay? So I'm a black woman in America. I could sit here and I could take and shoulder that and know that there are some experiences that I've had or ways that people might be prejudiced against me or whatever. This is all one side of it that I'm not saying is not true. It could be very well true. In my life, it's been about how is that helping me move forward? And it wasn't helping me personally to constantly think that everyone was against me, that there was no possible way for me to make it. Might I be in a different lived experience than someone else who has more privilege? Maybe. Yes. Okay, that can be true. But my life is happening right now. And in this body, in this way, in this life, today, this year, I want to find a path through. And so with my clients, my biggest thing is, one of my high ticket clients is a black trans woman. And I'm like, okay, if we were to have the privilege conversation, someone would say, you're fucked. But I'm like, what if the very place that you feel like you lack privilege, we could also find ways that you might have leverage, which is an uncomfortable conversation that people don't want to talk about, because then you have to take full responsibility for both things, that duality to be true. That, sure, on one hand, I might walk into a room and someone might judge me, but on the other hand, I'm the only person in that room, so I naturally stand out. So, how can we have that nuance of, I'm not saying that your lived experience is not true. My lived experience, very much, privilege is totally a conversation, but we're here now. And I want to get it done. And my dreams aren't changing. And there are people who have done it. I just need to figure out what my path is. And I don't know if that's, I was always a stubborn kid. Like, I'm just too stubborn to think that, oh, well, I'm this color, I'm this gender, I'm this, I'm that. So that's why it's not going to happen for me. I just refuse to let that be the story that is at least in the driver's seat. So for me, it's like, you can bring that story with you, but it's definitely not driving. It can't drive because that's where it becomes so detrimental and on your worst days very dangerous from a mental health perspective. So it's about balancing it all and knowing that it can all be true, but at the end of the day you have this one life and maybe 50 to 60 more years if you're lucky. So are you going to sit there and go, I have no options, there's nothing I can do? Or can we be creative, which is a lot harder, and also have the courage to break your own heart about some of the realities of the world that we live in, and then go, what am I going to do now?
I'm so happy you said that because my biggest problem with people who are doing somatic work is that they are just divorced from numbers and science. I'm just like, which research backs this up? Please tell me.
Mm,
Like, not everything can be da da da, you know? Of course, I'm a woman and I do this whole podcast because I do think that women are disadvantaged in a systemic way.
for sure.
And the other day, I was reading something about marriage, about how men can literally heal from a woman's touch, but marriage is actually making women sicker and more depressed. And there's numbers to support that. But at the same time, I just feel like everything cannot be like, I want to do this the feminine way. Because what is the feminine
That's
way?
right.
Really? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, we want to lead with this energy. What energy?
Hmm.
If you're not going to go to the office at 8 in the morning, nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it.
That's right.
Whether you're a woman CFO or whether you're a male CFO or a female CFO or CEO, you're just going to have to be there to build a company. It's not going to run on its own. And I'm not sure, like, how do these two things balance out? I want to lead with my feminine versus I want to be a Fortune 500 CEO.
Mm,
Should we, like, give up on the dreams that we have seen because we are just cut out to do home production? Like, is that our actual purpose? Like, I'm actually really interested in the question of, like, were women built for this? Because now I'm old enough and I've done the work. So I'm like, okay, I've actually I'm not 20 and I'm not being told by my family to stay home and raise children. I've lived the freedom and everything, but now I'm really interested to know because it doesn't offend me anymore. If somebody said to me, your real purpose in life is to do home production, I'd be like, okay, maybe. But how do these things balance out? Where is the boundary?
Mm. Wow, that is such a great question. An ever evolving question. Ah,
I know.
wow. Yeah, where is the boundaries? Because
Yeah.
I agree with you. I just, I'm somebody who will just like never lie. I just am always myself. Okay. And when you were saying that, I was just like, I just feel like people aren't always telling the full truth. That's my like, and that's why I really appreciate creators like Layla Hormozy, like Cody Sanchez, like women and people who are just like, sometimes business sucks, or sometimes you just need to work harder, or sometimes you just don't know what you're doing and everybody can tell. Like they're just telling the truth, where I think through the lens of people selling offers, right? Like so many coaches or speakers or creators, they're selling you on an idea, an ideal, right? Because gosh, it's just a lot easier to think that I can build a multi-million dollar company in 30 days flat. And for some people, that's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible because that's not my style either. But for most people, we are all flawed. We have shortcomings. I might be good at something and you might be good at something else, and we both have pitfalls. And it's such a windier road than that. And honestly, I think it does people a really big disservice because it makes people feel like they're broken, like something's wrong with them, because people are only showing the glossy finished product and not being honest about that. But yeah, coming back to the duality of those things, I think it's about the micro and the macro. And to your point, I heard you talk a lot about discernment. Like that's discernment being as in the knowing the actual art and felt science of knowing when to say yes to something and when to say no to something, right? Like you might actually, for example, it's 6:30 in the morning, to use your example. It's 6:30 in the morning and you're supposed to be at the office by 8. You wake up, you don't feel really good. You have two options. You can call in sick or you can go, right? And having discernment is the process of discernment is to decide, to figure out which of those options am I going to take. And so when it comes through the lens of the masculine and the feminine, the spiritual conversation, sometimes sometimes we choose to make sacrifices because we have a longer term vision of like, I don't want to go into the office today. I don't want to do this thing today, but I'm going to show up. Versus in my work, using the body as a compass of scale of 1 to 10, like there's all these frameworks and things that we do, like scale of 1 to 10, how much of this is a yes versus something else. And then knowing that your body maybe wants to stay at home, now we're going to cross reference that and bring that into your reality because you told me that you wanted to launch this business in the next 8 months, and you have all these other things that you haven't done. So if it's not now, then when is it? And if you can't come up with an answer, we're going to have to figure out a way to use these de-stressing techniques, to use these burnout reducing techniques to just get you there, because sometimes just what it is. And we just talk a lot, I think, so much because it's so quote unquote sexy. It's so nice to think like I can just like run around in a field in a white linen dress and then I'll make $1 million, when actually I don't know anybody who's just done that. And there I
No,
don't
of course not. It's so much sweat and work to make $100,000, much less $1 million.
it's so much work.
It's just so much bloody work, and you gotta do it. And that's the thing, right? Like, I'm so confused these days because I'm like, I wake up and I see so much of social media on my phone. Um, mostly I open my Instagram because I have to post something. But otherwise, I think it's just doom scrolling. I really avoid that in the morning. But I see so many women they wake up and they put out content like, I wake up at this time and then I do this and then I do this and this is my routine, and I'm just thinking, who are you serving?
Mm,
Because this lifestyle is just lived by five other women,
mm,
and 95% of them have to get to go to work, they have bills to pay. So like, I feel like this is so elitist.
mm,
And this is also the thing I actually told you while writing my sleep story. Like, I don't want to perpetuate a narrative that women need more sleep. So I'm just basically serving elite people with my journalism.
mm.
You know, it's not practical. And what I don't understand is why more people do not call out creators who've made it look like, unless you're in your feminine, you're doomed. You are destined. You're destined to die, and this is disaster. You're doomed if you're not. Like, I. How do I know? What do I need to do? Like, it would be really interesting if you could like answer for my audience. I feel not so great. I don't feel my 100%. Is it body intelligence that I need, or spinal energetics that I need, or I just need to work harder?
Mm,
Do you ever get clients who are there for you, who are there with you for all the wrong reasons, and like this woman with the
mm,
website, the example that you
mm,
gave? Do you ever get clients like that and you're just like, I'm not sure you should be coming to me,
mm,
so when should I be going to you?
Good question. I
You
love
know.
that. I love this question. So, to be clear, fundamentally, in my industry, there's so much rebellion and so much there's so much nuance to this conversation that you brought to light, and I'm here to work with people who want to walk the line. So I want to be super clear about that. Like, she came to me, and then honestly we didn't have another session after that, cuz I was like, if you're coming to me because you feel like you're not feminine enough and you just want to like cry about what happened 10 years ago, and I'm here for that, but I work with people who want to feel what they need to feel, so that you can what is the question I always ask my clients. And so if you feel like you're working with practitioners where the whole conversation is about the trauma or about this one note conversation about being more feminine, I'm more interested in an integrated um, union between the two of how do you. And for everybody, it's going to be slightly different. But if you're coming to me and you're just like, well, everybody tells me I need to be more feminine, so can you help me be more feminine? I'm gonna be like, I mean, I maybe. That's not really the conversation that I'm having. The conversation I'm having is, who are you right now in the 3D reality, like with your financial situation, with your relational situation, and where do you want to be? And what do you actually feel like is getting in the way? And if somebody says to me, usually my clients will say things like, I feel like I know what my problems are, but I just keep seeing the same pattern come up over and over and over and over again. And I talk to my therapist, I go to yoga, or I go for walks every day. Like, I actually do take good care of myself. So when everyone's telling me that I just need to be more feminine, it's not working. I'm like, you've come to the right place. So it's interesting, and I love that you brought in that clarification, because I you know what? I'll be honest with you. For the first half of my career, about like 7 years ago, I personally was thinking that I had to fit into that mold. And so like, if I were to, like, my content from before was like me in like a white linen situation with like sound bowls on the beach, and like and don't get me wrong, I have sound bowls, I live by the beach, I love white linen. I'm just saying that is not the conversation that we're having. The conversation that I'm having is, who are you today, right now? I understand that you have an internal landscape, an internal experience, and you might be experiencing chaos in your mind of, why can I not break this cycle when I take care of myself? I'm confident, I show up for my responsibilities, but inside, there's something that is not at rest. And I'm looking to reconcile my internal reality with my external reality so that they are not feeling dissonant and like they're fighting against each other. Because most of my clients tend to be really successful people, people who have built really big names for themselves, or, you don't have to be a celebrity to work with me. Just people who identify as the one that people come to, the one who gets it done, the one who their husband is like, you're so disciplined, the one who has it quote unquote all together. But behind the scenes, there's some humanity that's not really being expressed or tended to. So thank you for asking that question, because I never ever want to put that out, that I'm not the person to come to if you're looking for a one note experience. I'm the person to come to if you know deep down there's a part of you that is still in hiding and is kind of spiraling in this loop because of fear or something that has happened to you before, and you want to move on so that you can bring your mission and your purpose all the way through to the finish line.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're with a client and they have all these, I mean, it's also sort of therapy speak and healing speak, but like energetic
Hmm.
blocks, to put it simply. And they have the right mentality and the mindset, and you can have both because it's one of my lived experiences. Having the right mindset is not
That's
enough,
right.
because if you're really broken and hurt inside, you do this. I mean, definitely the having the right mindset helps. It helped me become disciplined, independent, all of that. But like actual accelerated growth, for me at least, only happened when I was able to identify what was wrong inside.
Mm.
And this is the reason I find it a bit shallow when people for certain go like, oh, but now this is my thing, I don't feel feminine enough. Because I'm like, it doesn't really work like that. If I have a challenge of feeling less feminine or whatever, I'm not gonna know. I mean, my therapist, of course, knew the first moment she saw me, but that's because she has enough clinical experience to know. But I walked in with a completely different problem.
Hmm.
I walked in with, oh, I have a horrible relationship with my mother. Oh, I don't know why I'm only meeting asshole men. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like the symptoms are just really different. The symptom cannot be I'm not feeling very
That's right.
feminine. Hello, I get my period every month. I'm feeling very feminine. How about like how can I feel more feminine than that? So I feel like this whole performative healing. It's so dangerous. I just genuinely think it's so
Yeah.
dangerous. How would people know? Because we're living in an age of information where the internet has led us to believe that we're all broken by default and we all have to be stitched back together,
Hmm.
which is sort of true, but not to the extent that we're made to believe. So what are the symptoms what symptoms should I be looking out for when something is not quite right internally?
Mm. Okay, so I love this question because you're so right. People, I'm like, yes. Okay, so I'm just like coming down from that transmission you just gave us all. It is dangerous, number one. I just want to kick back to that. I totally agree. So, how do we know? The symptoms that people come in with, it's exactly what you just said, actually, though. It's that dissonance of you're experiencing your relationship to other people as that's one symptom of not feeling good, right? We're like, every time that my mom, and that's the beginning of the work, right? Like every time my mom calls me, I just like can't stand it. Or like every time, me and my partner keep having the same fights over and over and over again. Or again, this is all about pattern recognition, is what I'm hearing as a theme. If you're listening to this right now, and I want you to think about this one pattern that is so annoying, it gets under your skin, and every time it gives you that like my mentor calls it like sacred rage. It's like when you start to feel that like build of like, oh, like it's almost inflammatory. That's the beginning. That's the beginning, is when you feel something, because that's the reaction, that's the gift of fear, right? That's all of that, is that like inflammatory response. Um and I'm somebody who really believes that, coming back to your conversation around, softness, femininity, and blah 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 blah. I think that it's actually like all of those like denser experiences that we have: rage, grief, sadness, resentment. They're all cues about where sometimes it's about where your values have been violated, where you've crossed over your own boundary, where um, they're all just cues. And so often the narrative is like, let's just try to be peaceful and calm all the time. I'm like, in what world? Like in this world, first of all. Second of all, we have to start pulling in all of those denser experiences. One of the biggest pillars of my work is that growth and grief are inextricably linked. And what we don't talk about enough is that fact. You'll see creators, you'll see all of us out there on Instagram talking about we made this much in this month, or we had this incredible retreat.
Yeah. Or do you want to go from making $500 a month to 4,500 a month
Yes, and you're
just
like,
by making YouTube videos? This is a scam. I'm
this.
like, it doesn't work, honey. It's a
I mean,
scam.
it's like, listen, it can work, but you're not giving me the full story. Like, you're not giving me the full story, or it's rare. Let me be more clear. Let me not be
Yeah.
making blanket statements because now I'm getting all in a tizzy. But the,
No, but you're right. It's
yeah,
not the full story.
it's not the full story. And when it comes to this conversation about anything that you're trying to expand into, it's just, you want to talk about science, it's just physics. What goes up must go down. What goes in also goes out, right? So growth and grief are inextricably linked. And so the conversation that I'm having with my clients is, I understand that you want 100K months. I understand that you want the husband of your dreams. I understand that you want to blah, 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 blah. Cool. An oak tree grows in two directions. It goes up just as high as the roots have to go down. So if you want to build something like that, I'm here to do the one thing that many practitioners claim to want to do, but actually don't hold the capacity for their clients, which is to go down. We're going to go down to go up, and then we're going to go out to go in. And that's how you create a holistic experience. So I hear you on all of this. And I think more of us being honest as practitioners, and that's on us. I say this to my fellow practitioners. I'm like, we need to be more honest. We need to be more vulnerable in a way that is within our scope, and make sure that we stay in our lane, because sometimes we start talking about things that we're not really in a place to talk about, and to remember that we're human too. Like, I'm a business owner, I'm a practitioner, I may have all these certifications, but I make mistakes too. And I think the best thing that we can all do is to come home to ourselves, be honest about that, tell the truth that, yeah, I was the face of very big brands that many people know. And I was being hypocritical behind the scenes. And I say that proudly, because I'm not proudly, but I say that honestly. You know what I mean? Because it was the truth of my experience. I've dealt with it. And now I'm going, so now what? So now when I know better, I can do better. And I just really encourage anybody who's listening, if you're seeking out practitioners, you're seeking out coaches, you're seeking out therapists, really listen for a message that's holistic and that feels honest, and doesn't feel, if it feels one note too glossy, there's probably another side of it that you're not really getting. So just don't get caught in that trap, because you will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, like my client did, blowing through their savings trying to go on all of these other things when they weren't really working with people who were being fully honest. And that's in any industry, but I think in the wellness, holistic, and spiritual spaces, it can be particularly devastating.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is behind the rise of healing, this healing trend, healing era, especially when it comes to women, women creators, and women customers? It's like a whole thing that's become, I don't see so many men doing it, but I do see a lot of women doing it. And of course, there's good things in that, but it's also very problematic.
Mhm.
In But as I see it, what do you think is behind the rise of this healing culture all of a sudden?
I think 5 years ago, we all were forced to slow down and to stop everything for the most part. And so I think in in that sense, when we were all forced to slow down and stop and reassess our values, reassess what's important, and then that created a splitting in the facade of some of the aspects of mainstream and really like more first world impositions, right? Um, on our humanity, on the ways that we make money, on the ways that we spend our time. It was just harder for people to integrate back into the workplace. I think that's just like cut and dry. People were having a really hard time going back to a job that they didn't really like, and then having that space to go, oh, why am I this way? And then I think that also allowed for this huge boom in the creator economy where people started to go, my friend started posting these things on TikTok, and now she is getting these brand deals. She doesn't have to go back to her corporate job, and everybody kind of wants a piece of the pie. Um, so I think there's so much to say, but the I think when everything came to a stop and that huge culture shift, and I think a lot of people, at least I can only speak from my corner of the world and the internet, experienced that and started to see, oh, I can make a career out of this. And that's where it's like insidious. Because I recently worked with a medicine woman who I work with often enough now, where, some people are meant to hold that space. Some people are meant to be therapists, coaches in the healing space, practitioners. And some people are trying to hold experiences that they desire and not experiences that they are meant to hold. And that's a really interesting nuance to think about, and that I encourage my clients and myself to always reassess of what's mine to hold, because it is very dangerous when you are claiming to be a trauma informed practitioner or whatever, and you're speaking from a place that's not rooted in integrity. You can very much do way more damage than good. So, lost the plot on the actual question, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. You said that 5 years ago we were all forced to slow down.
Mhm.
And that's something that I wanted to come to because you work with corporates and you've appeared in many publications and your work's really known. What are the challenges of working with clients from corporates and introducing them to these body based healing techniques when these corporates are actually spaces built for productivity and speed? So, like, it's everything but slowing down.
Mm.
Why do these corporates work with you? No offense.
I love it. Okay, wait, I love this
I
because
mean, if I'm a CEO, I do not want my employees gone for like a week because they're healing their bodies. Like,
right.
so who are these companies? Are they like literal corporates, or are they like more startups, or what kind
Mm.
of work do they do, and why do they come to you?
I love this so much. So I tend to work with, yes, like smaller companies, startups. And it's usually, I'll be honest, it's like the CEO and I met somewhere and they're like, okay, I want to work with you. And then they experience it and they go, how can I move this through my organization? But to answer your question on another level, you know, it's really connected to the way that I believe this work to play out. I'm not really having the conversation of how can you as a solo entity feel better right now. I'm having the conversation of how does your physical, mental, emotional, relational, ancestral health, financial health impact the people you relate to, the people that you work with, and the organizations that you're a part of, right? So this is about the conversation I'm actually having is we're going to slow down in our session so we can metabolize. I'm in the business of I call it stress metabolism, which this is like a very new coined term for myself. You won't find it on my website yet, depending on when this goes out. But I'm like the conversation
I
relate.
love that term. It's like responding to stress, not reacting.
Yes, and it's not about not having stress, because the conversation around stress management, in my opinion, is a dead one. Why would I want to manage something that I don't even have a hold on, that I don't understand, and that seems to be the problem? I want to have a conversation around stress metabolism. We are going to have challenges at work. We are going to have at the end of every quarter, we're going to have more challenges. Life is going to happen. big life transitions are going to happen, death is going to happen, divorce is going to happen. So how can we metabolize that to create more flow and then get you to bounce back from stress faster and through the lens of corporations coming back to work faster, because it costs business owners so much money when their key players are out on leave or out, trying to recover from burnout. So I'm like, let's actually metabolize this. So inevitably somebody in an organization will have a death, will get divorced, whatever. Let's metabolize it so we can keep things moving at you know, in their words, it'd be like at a faster pace, but it's just like getting more flow, more grease on the wheel, if you will. Does that track?
Yeah, it does. It's really interesting. So when these people, I love that, by the way, because that's the ripple effect. You meet someone, and then you're like, I met this person, and they left an impression on me, and I want to work with them.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the most beautiful way to connect with someone, just by feeling, by a vibe. But do these corporates then work with you across the organization, or like there are people who come to you? How do these organizations know who needs help? Because I mean, you're based in the United States, and everybody's supposed to be a cog in the machine in the
Mm.
US, and the hustle culture. And I've actually understood that the whole economy is built on people being human resource investments, capital investments, and if you want to slow down, it's possible you have a job, but you're not going to have a career, you know?
Mhm,
And I was
mhm.
reading this really interesting book by this woman, Corinne Lowe, and she's written a book about, she's from Wharton, she's an economist, and she's written a book about having it all, like women were made to believe that now you can have it all. But actually, marriage is built not in favor, but against women. She's written an entire book about it. Like, she's crazy. I love her. And like, I'm reading the book at the moment, and I realized that is so true. So, how do these corporates know? What's the structure like? Do these people who come to you feel comfortable like telling people in the organization that I need this work? Because it's America, and I actually have actually worked in America. So, I understand how it works in America. And it's taken me a long time to break my own conditioning around it, because I'm from Pakistan, and if you're from global south, you're moving to the global north, you're an immigrant, how life is. How does it work?
Mm,
The whole thing.
the whole thing. How does it all work? I love this. So, yes, I tend to work with leadership first, right? So I tend to, like I said before, I'll meet a CEO, I'll meet somebody who has decision making power, I'll be honest, and I'll work with them on a personal basis. And then from there, depending on the organization, sometimes it could be something as simple as just a workshop. It could be something just as a workshop. And again, I'm not coming in on level 10. You know what I mean? I'm coming in at level 1 to meet the masses of what are the one of my signature workshops is called it's called Break Up with Burnout, Stress Reducing Hacks to Get Your Groove Back. Like, what can we do day to day to just get through the day is the beginning of the conversation. But then it opens up this whole other door. If you can master, because most people don't know how to take care of themselves. Like on the masses, they're not doing the bare minimum. And so when I'm working on a larger scale, it tends to be, um, coming in, auditing people's experience and how they are moving through the day in ways that we can um, not be draining their energy in places where it's being misappropriated. But on a more in-depth high ticket, I'm working with the leaders themselves and how they lead the organization, how they structure meetings, how they structure scheduling, how they structure production. So it's more about working from the top down is usually where I find myself, versus speaking directly to the masses, even though I can. I mean, I did that at the beginning of my career, doing workshops here and there, like that Breakup with Burnout one. That was one of my first ones. So we move and we flux, but where I truly light up is working with leaders who have decision making power to help them first be in integrity with themselves, and then allow that to influence the way that they lead, the way that they structure, the way that they create the ecosystem so that it
Mm-hmm.
ripples down throughout the whole
Yeah,
organization.
I love that. Do you have have you have you seen any difference in the way women work in leadership versus men? Like genuine actual differences and not performative differences.
Mm, you mean naturally, like before we work together?
Not during the course of working together.
Mhm.
Do you feel like men and women are different when it comes to leadership roles and the way they work? Or do you think one of them has, which way is better? Is there a difference? How does it really work with men and women?
Yeah, I don't, I'm not one to say which is better because I think that's a subjective thing, a subjective opinion. And um, it comes, the resistance that I experience in watching them go through these processes is, we talked about this earlier, is based off of what projections or prejudice or expectations that they've been upholding for themselves based off of societal pressure or the culture that they've set already. Knowing that, I think we talked about Layla Hormozy earlier, right? And she's talking about how people will not put her as a signer on certain documents because they just assume that Alex has to be the one. And, you know, I think that when you're moving through the world in different bodies and people project those things onto you, it goes in both ways. Whereas men tend to not be respected in those roles if they show any signs of humanity, and then women are always being projected onto of, if you act disciplined or structured, or you'll be labeled as bossy or angry or all this stuff, so aggressive, right? So it's about, the work that we do is going, yeah, when you show up in that meeting, everybody is going to have to recalibrate to you. And the conversation that I'm having directly with the client is, let's expand your capacity to hold in that calibration period before snapping back, before clapping back, before reacting, and give people that time to meet you again and be able to hold the silence, hold the frame, let them get uncomfortable, let them react, and you're unwavering. Then let them get out of the meeting, figure out their life, and come back right. So that's the conversation that I like to have. But between the two, it's it's the same issue, but from different sides of the die or different sides of the coin, where it's all about projection. And can we, you and I, as women in business who are women of color, it's like people are going to make judgments on you and judgments on me. Can we hold the frame, stay true to what we're saying, and do whatever extra work we have to do to make it clear, and let others recalibrate?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's how you get to lead, right? You get to lead other people to another way of doing things.
Yeah. What's spinal energetics?
Love these. Okay, let's talk about this. Okay,
It's
more
so
specific.
new for me. Like, I'm honest, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, before I answer that question, tell me what you think spinal energetics is based off of what you've seen.
Oh my God. I'm on the spot on my own podcast.
Spinal energetics is a huge, it's challenging because it's a newer concept to a lot of people. But here's what I can say. Our bodies respond to environments, right? Just like you said earlier, you're walking down the street, you can feel when going down that street feels a little unsafe. You're in a conversation with someone you just met, you can kind of feel whether you like them, whether you don't. Instincts, right? So what we're doing with spinal energetics, and which is influence does influence my work a lot, um, is we create an environment for your nervous system to downregulate and for you to somatically process experiences that have been holding you in that functional freeze. So this is all about, with a practitioner, because somatic work, you can process things somatically solo. So when you hire a practitioner like that, and I'm a spinal energetics level 2 of 2 practitioner, we're creating an environment for your system to co-regulate, recalibrate, and to integrate what you've been kind of storing and holding in this functional freeze and moving through your life and having reactions, having inflammatory
Mm,
reactions. But now we're creating a space for that to finish the
right.
stress loop.
So I read something about being a good chiropractor, as well
Mhm,
as a lot of holistic work that happens under the umbrella of spinal energetics.
mhm.
But what does it look like? I mean, is it a range of things that you can do? But what does it physically look like? Is it meditative? Um, how do I come into that state of being? How do I come into that state of presence that
Mm,
you then hold space for? Is
mm.
it a, is it different for everybody, or there's like standard techniques? You know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I will say this through the lens of spinal energetics, it's just like anything else. You can get certified at something, and then every practitioner will take it and apply it to their client base, to their business, whatever. But as far as getting to that state, um, I'll be honest that practitioners tend to do it. We have a frame, but they tend to get people to that state in slightly different ways. But what's important to remember is that we are starting the work in relationship to the body and the fascia. So basically, here's what I can say. What I can say is when you're experiencing tension, when most people think of the word tension, they think of maybe like tension in your shoulders, right? So they'll go for a massage and the masseuse, they'll go, oh, this is a really tight knot. So I want a really hard massage. I want them to get their elbow in there and all of that. Well, what we're working with is have you ever asked yourself why that muscle is tense? Like, why there? Why not in your arms? Why not in your legs? Why not? Why the right side, not the left side? And the short layman's answer to it is because there is a memory that is being stored in the fascia in your body, telling there's something that is telling the muscle to tense up. And what we're working, why that muscle? The body works in mysterious ways, right? Why that muscle? There's so many, I mean, I could get into like a whole physiology of like the right side versus the left side and all the organs and the meridians and all of that, which is probably beyond the scope of our conversation today. But what I can say is that the body, has different connections based off of our nerves and how things work to different um, responses. So, what we're working with in spinal energetics in a lot of the cases is working with the part of the body that tells your muscle to be tense, or working with the part of the body that is sending an inflammatory response to give you a headache, working with the part of the body that is sending the pain trigger rather than just going to the place where you're feeling the pain and creating more pain and forcing that muscle to open up because of force. We're going, let's go to the root of where in the connective tissue it's actually being stored and deal with that. Does that track?
I love that because once my therapist told me many years ago, anything that you ignore that happens to you, your body is going to store it.
Hmm.
And I mean, Carl Jung actually says that you cannot understand psyche without understanding the body. So it's so true because I used to have a lot of pelvic floor tension, painful sex, pelvic floor healing from abuse, and those things. And I remember like every single time to this day when I have some tension, I have it in my inner thighs.
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes I'm reading something and I can feel my inner thighs like tensing up. Like I know that. But that is because I've done the work. There was a time I was not even aware that I'm tensing up in this part of the body because I used to think that my state of contraction is actually the normal state. I'm not sure about other people, but that is what it was like growing up for me. Some parts of the body are just tense, so you don't really even register that we're more tense in these parts of the body. And do you also kind of work with identifying which parts are tense, or do people normally come and tell you? Because that's also something that doesn't happen in that order. Like how performative healing tells us, you
Yeah.
actually go with a completely different complaint. And then
Mm,
it's like peeling an onion, and then you get to one point and then the next.
totally. You know, people are more aware sometimes than they think when they come in, right? And they'll come in saying, "Okay, I have pelvic floor pain." Like they know the symptom. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there in the first place. So me as a practitioner, I go, "Okay, pelvic floor pain. That could be a whole slew of things, right? That could be anything from a physical trauma to it could be something that's going on with your hormones, chemically, is sending signals. It could be all kinds of things. But the most important thing to say is that when people come in with the symptom, I trust them in that, first of all. Like, that's where it's landing in your body. This is how it's coming back to the whole spiritual not bypassing situation that we were talking about earlier is I trust my clients to know what what is the problem that they're experiencing in their life. And as a practitioner, it's my job to know, well, the womb and the pelvic area is also through the body connected to the neck and the throat in a lot of ways. So sometimes people have like almost this deferred symptomatic experience where they're experiencing true discomfort in their pelvis, but the actual signal is coming from higher up or it's coming from the neck or vice versa. So that's like my job through like muscle testing and some other things that I do. I can see where, okay, you're experiencing pain here. And so what most people do is they go, okay, I'm just going to focus here. But through all the networks of the body, through the nerves and the spinal column, and it's all connected. It's like, oh, actually, the pain is somewhere else. It's being generated from somewhere else. So I'm not going to focus on the symptom. I'm going to focus on the root cause based off of muscle testing and other things that I use. Um, so yeah, I trust my clients to know where their problems are. And I trust
Yeah.
myself to find where the root of that problem is actually coming from. And then we go back at the end and go, how does your pelvic floor feel? Because if it
Right.
hasn't shifted, then maybe we need to do some other assessing.
Right, right. And before we close, I'm just interested because you work with so many people. W- What kind of things do women come to you with? Is there a pattern that you've sensed?
Hmm.
Where are we failing women, and where is the system not able to identify that? Of course, we're failing them at many, very many levels. But like in the healing arena, because there's so much healing. I mean, you're gonna open Instagram right now and you're gonna be like, "Oh, are my cortisol levels really high today?" So maybe I have inflammation. So it's just like,
Oh my gosh, you are hilarious. Okay, yeah, keep going.
you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I don't need this all the time. Come on. Like, when am I gonna actually heal and start living? I'm all the
Mm,
time healing. But I do know that in the middle of all of this, I do know that there are problems. And there's problems, structural problems. So that's what makes me wonder, do women come to you with any structural problems, anything systemic that you've noticed?
when people come to me, it I find that it is very cyclical as well. So I just want to name that first. Like when certain things are going on in the collective, I will start to see the same patterns coming up in people. And it's so interesting because it does metastasize in the body, where a lot of people will be coming in client after client experiencing back pain, client after client experiencing a cough, client after client experiencing pelvic floor troubles. But when people do come to me lately, it's been a lot around identity. It's been a lot around sexual abuse or a lot in the womb area. Um, and that concept of sacred, of unexpressed rage. Like that has been, those have been the biggest themes as of late. And systemically, I mean, I know that you can speak to this as well. So I know we're wrapping up here. It's probably a whole other episode. But I will say, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's everything from um, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, having to constantly swallow our sense of identity. And um, the we talked about this in our last conversation, um, around the cyclical nature of the way that women's bodies do run, and there is a way to fuse those with the modern workplace, but it just constantly gets ignored. And women just coming to me feeling like they have to be something that they're not, and them having. I'll end with this because this is such a huge conversation. So many people do come to me going, I just want to increase my intuition. I feel like I'm not connected to my body. I'm not connected to my intuition. And I usually say to them, you know, I think you're here because you do have a strong connection with your intuition. You're listening, you hear it. The problem is that you don't feel connected to your courage to act on it. You don't feel connected to listening and acting. You're listening, you hear it. We know, women know. We always know. We always know. Even when we don't know, we know. And the actual issue is not the listening. You hear it. It's in the having the courage to act. And so that's where my work comes in of, okay, you're hearing the sensation in your body, in your pelvic floor. Now, let's get you connected to responding in a way that allows us to alleviate that discomfort or to metabolize the stress, the trauma, the stories that you've been holding. And those are like the biggest conversation that I'm having. It's not about listening. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, I'm not connected to my intuition, yes, you are. You know what's wrong. The problem is that you feel disconnected to your courage to respond and to act in alignment with that. And that's what I'm here to help women do.
I love that. Are women putting the work in the right place, or are we doing it all wrong? Or is
Well,
it
I
the
don't
men
think,
who need to put in the work and we're just doing it and it's not working? Just
I
joking, but
think,
like, are we actually putting the work?
I think it's, I always feel, this is just me as a person. I always feel like it takes two to tango. I do think that a lot of our conversation today was about where women, since this is a conversation for women and by women, where women are misplacing their energy and their focus, because they're still somehow all coming back to the same patriarchal indoctrination of, um, you know, not not listening to themselves and responding in the way that they naturally would, which I don't know. I don't know. Some of the strongest women I know, I'm like, they are some tough cookies. Like, I don't know. Those women are not
Yeah, tough
laying on
as
the
nails.
tough
Yeah.
as nails. And like, our
Yeah.
bodies are these exquisite vessels that put up with so much. They're so strong, and we get fed this like soft pansy thing when actually it's so much more nuanced than that. So to answer the question, yes, I think that sometimes we as women, we are putting our focus in the, in my opinion, wrong place or misplacing it. And I also think that it's a conversation for men and people across the gender spectrum to just know that this conversation is a conversation for everyone. We're talking about women today, but to your point, men have a part in this. People of all genders have
100%. Yeah.
a part in this. People of all races, it doesn't matter what color you are, where you come from. This is a conversation for all of us. And if you can know where you sit, like I know where I sit as a Black woman, and you know where you sit, then we can all have a seat at the table and break it down together.
Thank you.
Thank you
That was
so
very
much, my dear.
eloquent and very articulated. Thank you so much for being here.